You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all day or all week to get in on the fun. The party doesn't stop when we go off the air all week long. The Sports Fix social media sites are your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Jump over to Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, and become a fan today because we love fans and they create some of the best sports talk in town, Daddy. You'll enjoy talking to your fellow Cleveland sports fans on the Sports Fix fan page. And if Twitter's your thing, well, you know how we do it. Tweet with us at the SportsFixCLE. It's that simple.
Twitter.com/TheSportsFixCLE, baby.
Chat live with the crew during all your favorite Cleveland sports events, tickets and contests and trivia and so much more. Get with us today, the Sports Fix on social media. Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at the SportsFixCLE. Join the Sports Fix on Facebook and Twitter today. Business owners and professionals, do you want to take your business, your product, your team, your event to the next level? You want to advertise right here with the Sports Fix. Our listeners are among the most loyal listeners on the dial, terrestrial or internet, and our audience is one of the greatest and most receptive audiences in all of radio. The Sports Fix universe is not only listeners of the radio show, but tens of thousands of fans on Facebook and Twitter. Our social media universe expands by the day, all in the prime demographics to help drive your business directly into the winner's circle. Don't take my word for it. The Sports Fix comes with reference upon reference that have done business with us in the past and had some fun along the way. For more information on how we can help you knock your business, event, team, product, or promotion out of the park, email me, Jerry Myers, thesportsfix@AOL.com. That's thesportsfix@AOL.com, and let me help you swing for the fences and hit it out of the park. Advertise your product right here on the Sports Fix.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo North Olmsted presents bike nights every Monday, all summer long. $3 beers and drinks for bikers, $5 pizza, and more. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Hey, it's Hugh Hewitt, and when I want to know what's going on with the Cavs, the Browns, and the Tribe, I tune into Sports Fix.
Live in Ohio, it's time to get your fix. The Sports Fix.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good night, whatever it may be, wherever you are. Welcome in, my friends, to the Sports Fix. J-Rocc with you. We are kicking off not only another edition of the Sports Fix here live on the sportsfix.net, or however you're joining us, but kicking off another week. Hell, we kicked off another football season yesterday, and man, as much as you hate to say it, how much of it felt like something you've already seen before. Not all of it. We're going to talk about that here in just a little bit. So much going on. A jam-packed Monday. Kicking off our week. Welcome into the Sports Fix. I hope you are locked and loaded and ready to go and pumped up, because if not, well, that's my job. That's what we do here. I'm going to pump you up, get you ready to bust through this workday. Listen, I understand. I definitely understand. As I adjust my equipment here, we were on the road yesterday, of course, at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Takes me a minute to get things back rocking and rolling here in the home base, Daddy. You know, I understand a lot of people around, and trust me, we have got literally hundreds of comments on our social media, phone calls. I'm going to play some a little bit later on. Going to open up the phone lines about yesterday, about the Browns game, and I understand, and we're going to talk about that, you know, but hopefully, we'll get into that in just a minute. You know what? I'm not even going to sidetrack right now. We're going to talk Browns here in just a little bit, and we're going to talk Browns in NFL Week 1 with John McMullen from the Sports Network. He's going to join us a little later on here, just like he does each and every Monday, right here on the Sports Fix. Ohio State Buckeyes. Hey, let's get some positive vibes going here, Daddy. The Ohio State Buckeyes, big victory, even with, deep breath Buckeye fans, with the injury to Braxton Miller as Kenny Guyton comes in. Hey, you know what? We talked about it with Dan Wismar of the Cleveland Fan last week about how Kenny Guyton is truly the best backup quarterback in all of college football, and he came through in spades for the Buckeyes. We're going to talk to Dan Wismar a little bit later on about the Buckeyes' Week 2 victory. We'll look ahead to Cal and see what's coming ahead. Dan Wismar joins us from the Cleveland Fan a little bit later, talking the Ohio State Buckeyes in just a few minutes. I'm going to talk Tribe, Daddy. They are in the playoff chase They are dead thick of it this weekend. You know, there's a little bit of greediness when you're in it like you are, because now you're mad, you know, at missed opportunities because they could have taken a sweep. They could have. They had it right there. Going to talk Indians baseball here in just a little bit, Daddy. All of that, of course, the Browns breakdown and so much more live here on the Sports Fix. So let's get rocking and rolling. Plus, hey, I got a t-shirt to give away here in just a minute too, so let's do what we do. Welcome into the Sports Fix, my friends. I am your host, the Big Daddy on the microphone, J-Rocc, Jerry Myers, with you live and loud, hot and heavy, baby, from now until 1:30 as we kick off our week, recap the weekend that was, and so much more. Thank you for joining us, no matter how you're joining us or where you're joining us, whether it's live, streaming directly on the sportsfix.net, whether you're on Mixlr.com, whether you're listening on any of our digital delayed platforms like iTunes and Stitcher, Spreaker, SoundCloud, all the different services that podcast the show. No matter how or where or when you're listening, thank you so much, because truly it is our opportunity to present this for you, and I thank you so much for that each and every day. The Sports Fix, of course, it takes a nation to build this thing up, Daddy. The Sports Fix is brought to you by, hey, speaking of, the Harry Buffalo in North Olmsted, where we were yesterday rocking it out, and what a great time it was. Packed house at the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. We not only did pregame, postgame, and halftime shows live right here on the sportsfix.net, so if you don't want to listen to those other guys, hey, listen to us. We're there 15 minutes pregame, postgame, and halftime, live from the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, and if you're in the Northeast Ohio, come on down and join us, because it really was a great time. We were live on the air. We talked to some people live on the air. It was some good times. The mood was pumped up. Gave away some Indians tickets for tomorrow's game. Did some Cleveland trivia, so much more. Good time was had on and off the air. And guess what? You've got 15 more chances to make it, Daddy, because we're going to be there for each and every Browns game for the rest of the season live. So come on out to the Harry Buffalo North Olmsted and check us out. And speaking of Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, tonight, bike night. This is the final run. There's 3 or 4 weeks left. Get on out there after 4:30. Ride your bike. Take advantage of one of the last few days we've got. The weather this week going to shift. We talked about last week being beautiful for an extra week. Going to start to shift into that fall weather this week. That autumn playoff baseball weather. Just saying. So you might want to get out there to the Harry Buffalo. Check them out tonight. They've got all kinds of drink, beer, wing specials, and so much more. Go check them out. Harry Buffalo North Olmsted, just outside Great Northern Mall. Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck, proud sponsors of the show, and we're proud to work with them. quicklane.com/Valley Ford Truck. Check them out in person at 5715 Canal Road, just under the 480 bridge in Valley View. No matter what it is, car, truck repair, whether it's a commercial vehicle, big or small, short or tall, they can fix them all. They'll take care of you, and they'll work around your schedule and your needs as far as transportation and everything else. Check them out. quicklane.com/Valley Ford Truck. Signs and Ship, our good friends at signsandship.com, the official business printing source of the Sports Fix. Love those guys. We deal, of course, with the home location in Elyria, but they've got offices in Pennsylvania, Florida, Richmond, Virginia, and, of course, as I said, here in Ohio. Quality printing at affordable prices. If you're a business owner, check them out. Whether you need business cards made, whether you need signs, perhaps you need mobile vehicle advertising, and perhaps, just perhaps, hey, you need your brand branded. Sometimes you go, I've got the greatest idea, but I just don't know how to, I don't have a logo. I don't have something that has that boom, that ping, that pizzazz. They'll take care of you. Chris at Signs and Ship, a fantastic graphic designer. They can help you brand your company and get yourself out there. Check them out on the internet at signsandship.com or call Chris and Pam at 440-323-6060. Signs and Ship, quality printing at affordable prices. Last but not least, saved them for the end because we've got a t-shirt to give away. Our friends at GV Art and Design, of course, gvartwork.com. You guys know them. Cleveland that I love. You've seen them grow and build momentum throughout Cleveland for the last few years as the athletes and the people that you watch on the field represent the products of GV Artwork around town. Cleveland that I love. Like I said, they put it on their chest and they put it out there for you. And now it's not just a website at gvartwork.com. It's also a brick and mortar store, Daddy. Beautiful location. Check them out in Lakewood on Detroit Avenue out there. Hey, right by the Harry Buffalo, by the way. Check them out. Check them out at gvartwork.com. And remember, you can use the sales code FIX. Anytime you make a purchase, you'll save 10% on your total purchase just for telling them that you listened and heard about them on the Sports Fix. And by the way, speaking of GV Artwork, what I'm about to do right now is what we do each and every Monday right here when we kick off the show, and that is give one lucky listener the chance to win a t-shirt of your choice free from gvartwork.com just for sharing the content that you hear right here on the show. Everybody whose name is in this hopper in front of me, all week long, they've shared the replays of our show, or while the show was on live, they sent out a tweet, or they sent out a Facebook post, and they told somebody to listen to the show, tagged us in the post so we could see it, and they got their name, or you got your name dropped in the hopper. And each and every week, we dig through these couple hundred names, and one person gets the t-shirt of your choice. You get to go to gvartwork.com, find a t-shirt you like, and pick it up on our dime just for helping spread the word about the Sports Fix and gvartwork.com. So this week, we're going to dig in the hopper right now, and we're going to find out who wins. We do this each and every week. And like I said, you get a chance right now. If your name's not drawn right now, as I pull this name, if it wants to come out of the hat, if your name's not the name that I'm holding in my hand, hey, as soon as I'm done, the contest starts again for next week. You can share right now. Tell somebody, tune into the Sports Fix, live on the sportsfix.net. That cat J-Rocc is crazy. Doesn't matter what you tell them to listen. Your name will be in the hopper for next week. Much like this man right here, Chris Schroeder. Chris Schroeder. Congratulations, Chris. You have won a t-shirt of your choice from gvartwork.com. I'll find him. I'm not sure if he follows us on Facebook or Twitter. I will find Chris, and I will let him know, or perhaps you're listening, Chris. Congratulations. You've won the shirt of your choice. I'll get you the ins and outs of how you can do that. And now that's it. Boom. The hopper's empty. I'm going to throw all these pieces of paper away. Starting now, you can get your name in for next week. And next Monday, live at noon, when we kick off the week, we will have another drawing for the GV Artwork t-shirt of your choice. So right now, share away, tell your friends to listen, tag us in it so that we can tell everybody that you were the ones that did it. Drop your name in the hopper and you'll get a t-shirt. All right, let's do what we do. The phone lines are open. 216-539-7535 is the number to call. 216-539-7535. Hit us up whether you want to talk about the Indians, the Browns, it doesn't matter. Phone lines are open. We've got a couple of guests coming on later in the show, so the first few segments of the show here would be ideal if you want to get on the phone and get your take heard. 216-539-7535 is the number to call. Of course, if you can't get to the phone, a lot of you can't. If you're listening, not live, you're listening on the replay, hey, hit us up on Facebook, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Leave your comments live during the show and throughout the remainder of the day. That's one of the coolest things about my day, is I get to go on throughout the day and see comments from people listening to the show throughout the day as they continue to interact with the show. It's like I'm constantly on the air. So hit us up, facebook.com/this. Wait a minute, I should be getting paid a whole lot more if it's constantly on the air. I'm working a whole lot more than I'm getting credit for here. Hit us up, facebook.com/thesportsfix. Become a fan while you're there. Tweet with us at the Sports Fix CLE. If Twitter's your thing, I'll read those tweets live on the air. Tweet with us at the Sports Fix CLE. Email us, thesportsfix@AOL.com. And of course, like I said, you can hit up the phone lines, 216-539-7535. I'm going to get into the Browns here in just a minute, because definitely a lot to get into there. But first, this past weekend, and I'll tell you what, I'm gonna preview Kansas City a little bit later on in the show, because I want to give that a little bit of time as well. I'm gonna catch that. So we're gonna kind of bracket this show. I'm gonna talk a little Tribe here at the beginning, and then I'm gonna hit it again at the end of the show. But looking at this past weekend, I'll tell you what, like I said, as we were opening up the show there, in my little monologue there, you get greedy at this time of year when you're competing for the playoffs, when you're in this mode, because, 2 out of 3 ain't bad, like the old song says. 2 out of 3 ain't bad, but man, they had the opportunity to sweep the Mets. It was right there. They let them off the hook. Like I said, you still did take 2 out of 3, but now is that time of year where you sit there with your eyes wide open, and you just want to gobble it up. And now you've got that opportunity as well coming up with Kansas City. No team has a more dominant record against another team in baseball this year than, with the exception of Detroit over the Indians, of course. The second biggest differential is the Indians over the Royals. So this is a team that the Indians have, had a really good success record against this year, and this is the opportunity for them to go out there and show that because you're moving down the street. A lot of people caught up in the hype about the Browns and all of that and the opening, weekend. I get all that. That's a big deal here. It's an event. But, meanwhile, the Indians had slipped to within one game back of the wild card. They got back then, 5 games, but back within, at least laughing, striking distance of Detroit. Point is they slipped their way right back in, and you would think a lot of people didn't notice it. The attendance again, and we talked about it at the tail end of last week. The attendance again, though, I'm telling you, it's kind of, this is a tough thing to say. I came across a few extra pairs of tickets over the weekend for yesterday's game, and I had trouble giving away tickets to yesterday's Indians game, if you can believe that. And I'm sure, hey, look, you might not have seen, the posts or whatever. Hey, there's probably people going, hey, I would have took them. I'm just saying, in the cross-reference of the people that I dealt with over the weekend, I had a hard time giving away tickets to yesterday's Indians game simply because they played at the same time as the Browns. And while I do understand that the Browns were kicking off the beginning of their 16-game season, meanwhile the Indians were down in the home stretch, and it was bad timing as far as the Indians. I understand that because you have 80,000 people congregated down there together, and speaking of that, how about all the mess with the police and the traffic and everything down there yesterday morning? I mean, people waited 2.5, 3 hours to get into their tailgates in the Muni lot. That was, tag that up with a nasty loss and put those two together. You probably had some not too happy people on that same road back out. But anyways, looking at that, you got to look at the Indians' attendance. And I'm telling you, and I hate to say this because I do believe the commercials. This isn't a tribe town. It is a football town too. It's a sports town. But I fail to believe that this town is not going to, over the next year or two, begin to rebound its attendance for the Indians. But I got to be honest, part of me fears that they won't. And if that's true, based on what we've seen already for the last 5 to 7 years, that leads me to wonder, with all these questions in baseball about attendance, how much longer before baseball, not publicly, but at least behind the scenes, starts talking about Cleveland the way they're talking about some of these other towns? And that is a scary thing to say because I can't, then again though, hey, before 1995, we could have never imagined a time that the Cleveland Browns wouldn't be in Cleveland. And I'm not trying to say that the Indians are going to pack up and move away, nothing like that. I really do believe that this town's going to come through for the tribe and the attendance is going to pick up. But, even during the 2007, Paul Hoynes did a good article over the weekend in one of the Plain Dealers. I can't remember if it was Sundays or Saturdays, but about how even during the last playoff year, the attendance didn't really bounce back the way the Indians had assumed and hoped that it would once they had a more successful product on the field. And you look at that pattern and you go, what will it take to turn that around? And I've got to think that it will turn around. I really do. I'm honestly saying that. I'm not sitting here saying, but, looking at reality, you sit here and go, man, I see how cities fool themselves into losing their teams, and I see how those situations happen, and we've seen it happen to us here in Cleveland before, so maybe that makes me a little more susceptible to the issue, but I just really hope that the Indians fans prove me right, not necessarily in the next 6 weeks, although that would be nice, and yes, I said 6 weeks, because that's going to take us into the playoffs, Daddy, which is where the Indians are headed, but not just for the rest of this season, but heading forward into the next few years. And hopefully a few years from now, we're looking back and just looking at the darker days for attendance and not the beginning of a trend that the city of Cleveland wasn't really able to recover from. All right, we're going to talk more Indians baseball because, like I said, Daddy, I believe that the Indians, They have seen what they've got in front of them here. And look, some of these reinforcements coming up, we talked about it. You get Kluber coming back. Some of these guys here are going to just add to the stretch bullpen, too, over the weekend, man. I mean, even yesterday with Salazar coming out early, that bullpen again did their job until Chris Perez at the end. We'll pick up the Indians talk a little bit later on in the show when we wrap things up and preview the Kansas City Royals, because that series is on tap now after taking 2 out of 3 from the New York Mets. We'll talk more Indians baseball later. We're going to shift to the Browns. They kicked off their season yesterday. I've got an interesting message from my man Jersey Dog Scotty in New Jersey with his first take on the Browns season, and I've got mine, and we'll talk about that when we come back. Your calls as well, 216-539-7535. We're talking Browns football when we come back, live here on the Sports Fix.
What was the condition for rule and control? The media sells it, and you leave the role.
This is the Sports Fix.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Are you talking to me?
Yes.
Hey, call me Mr. Pig!
We'll call you whatever you like, as long as we can call you a fan of the Sports Fix.
You're listening to the Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Quick Lane at Valley Ford Truck, home of the low price tire guarantee. quicklane.com/Valley Ford Truck. Football season is party season at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Everyone wins at Harry Buffalo. Every Saturday is Coors Light College Football Saturday with $6 pitchers, 4 bottles for $10, and the Buckeyes in full HD. Football season is most definitely party season, and your headquarters is Harry Buffalo North Olmsted all winter long. Harry Buffalo, join the herd. Sports Fix listeners, like us on Facebook today. Facebook.com/The Sports Fix.
You love Cleveland, and you already know how much we love Cleveland. You know who else loves Cleveland? GV Art and Design. Everyday fans, you and I wear our pride on our sleeves. Now, you can wear your pride on your chest. GV Art and Design has one of the hottest Cleveland sporting lines. Whether it's their Cleveland That I Love design, or perhaps it's the Superman Birthplace of a Hero line of team-themed designs. Whether you're a fan of the Indians or Browns, the Lake Erie Monsters or the CSU Vikings, the Cleveland Cavaliers, or just Cleveland in general, GV Art and Design has a logo, design, or style for you. Sports Fix listeners, as a special treat, every time you make a purchase from GV Art and Design, use the sales code FIX and save 10% on your total purchase. Log on right now to gvartwork.com, check out all of their fantastic designs,
And don't forget, use the sales code FIX to save 10% on your total purchase.
follow gvartwork.com on Facebook, and remember, GV Art and Design, it's not just a shirt, it's a statement.
Hey everybody, this is Jerry the King Lawler from WWE, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
The Fix is in. Call J-Rocc now at 216-539-7535. We want to hear from you now. 216-539-7535.
J-Rocc, brother, what's up? It's Jersey Dog, Scotty from Jersey. Just a couple quick things on Wheaton. I think Benjamin and Little, maybe not Benjamin, but I think 2 catchable balls. Benjamin should have made a little bit of a better play on that long bomb, which ended up being basically a long punt. Little has the butterfingers that slipped off his hands. Wheaton looked like, I'm going to say, looked like a 23-year-old second-year quarterback, but he's 30. That's why we want to crush him. Not a big fan, you know, and I've always been like that with him, but not really a big fan of him. But, again, if he wasn't 30, might like him a little more. Cousins, a couple bad plays. I don't think it was game-changing. I think we got to deal with injuries. We're going to cry about that. We have a long season. Great game on the run, on the defensive line. Hopefully Miami's not an overrated running team, but I think they played great. Anything under 50 yards is an A+ by me. Besides Hayden, I think our corners are in a lot of trouble. I don't think we can cover anybody. I think that was actually piss poor and embarrassment. But that's what we got. Impressed with Jordan Cameron. Played great. But that's what we have for him for the whole year. He's going to be 80 yards a game. Pretty impressed with him. That's about it. A couple beers in me. Sorry if it's a little loopy there. But good luck. I'll talk to you soon, brother. Later.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix, streaming live here on the sportsfix.net. That was my man Jersey Dog calling us on the hotline, 539-7535. You can call us 24 hours a day. Scotty up in New Jersey leaving his take. Love to play those on the air, or you can call us live right now, 216-539-7535. Where are you at as a day, as I said yesterday when we were live at the Harry Buffalo in our post-game wrap-up, a day that began with so much energy. You could see it in the Harry Buffalo, so much enthusiasm and energy in the building, and it carried through until the second half, where once again we saw, new regime, new players, new everything, yet we saw a lot of what looked like the same old Cleveland Browns. And, I'm not going to go 100% hardcore. Hey, look, there's 15 games left in this thing, Daddy. But at the same time, there are bullet points and electric points, and we talked about throughout the preseason, Vashon mentioned, and we talked about this before, the judgment call in not playing guys in the preseason when they really need opportunities to practice together and practice in this offense, and you can't do that and then do what you did yesterday. A truly winnable game. The Browns had a defense that came to win. Anybody that watched that game would realize that the Browns defense, until they were worn down at the end, played incredibly well. I mean, they finished, for all the negative vibes that are going around right now, let me start off with a positive note. The Browns allowed the second least amount of rushing yards in the history of their franchise, something they haven't done since 1954. They allowed only 20 rushing yards on 23 carries. The 23 carries to me makes it a little more credible because it does show an effort to run the ball by the Miami Dolphins. It's not concerted because it could have been more for sure, but it also showed, hey, you're holding guys to a less than 1 yard per carry average as well, containing Ryan Tannehill, containing the scrambling there. A good job there up front, much more stout, because as we know, that's been a problem consistently since 1999, is that being gashed by the run defense. Now, so that being said, now let's flip to something else. Let's look at the backside of that defense, because Jersey Dog mentioned it there, and he, it's a point that everybody's got on the tip of their tongue. You had Mike Wallace being covered by Joe Hayden, and then you had Brian Hartline covered by Buster Skrine. Buster Skrine again shows, and this leads me to question the judgment call here on the personnel, because how many times have we talked about how Chris Owens is better at covering the outside than the slot, and Buster Skrine, vice versa, much better against the slot, gets torched on the outside. Buster Skrine last night put on the outside, yesterday afternoon I should say, put on the outside. Hartline beats him for that touchdown pass, and hey, I'll give credit too, man. Great pass by Ryan Tannehill, who impressed me in the way he took what the Browns defense gave him yesterday. I'll give him credit. I think that we saw that perhaps the combination, and I don't know how good Miami's going to be this year. I think they're going to be improved for sure, but I think we saw that the combination of Tannehill with Mike Sherman put back together there, his college coach, is going to lead to some success there. Real quick note, since I'm talking about the Dolphins, by the way, man, Mike Wallace, did he show his true colors yesterday already? You can say that was a benefit, a bonus, whatever, to get him on your team. Man. You get a big victory on the road in your opening week one, and Mike Wallace is out there pouting, throwing a fit, storming out of the locker room, mad because he only had one catch, mad because he wasn't a bigger part of the game plan. That, my friends, is what's wrong with Mike Wallace, and that's why he's going to end up being more bust than boom, no matter how many catches he catches down there. Just something I know. I saw that, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You guys won the game, right? And you're doing this in week one? Anyways, just wanted to bring that up. And let's go to the head of the beast, because I'm sitting here talking right now about Ryan Tannehill. So let's flip that right over to the Cleveland Browns and Brandon Weeden, because we talked about Brandon Weeden. We talked about him building up through the entire offseason. We talked about the preseason and how everything was built this year to no excuses for Brandon Weeden. That was the key, was no matter what he did this year, things were built in a system that was going to be better for him. He was in the shotgun, going to be in the shotgun the majority of the time. All the things that we mentioned were wrong last year, it was going to be corrected. And we saw in the first few preseason games where little effort was put in actually game planning against Brandon Weeden in those first two games, that at least he was better at hitting the targets when they were standing still. But as we saw with the Brandon Weeden that we saw yesterday, you have to admit, much more resembled the Brandon Weeden that we saw in week 3 of the preseason. And that was what they call the dress rehearsal for a reason, because as much as people tried to brush it off after it was over with, it was still the closest representation to what he was doing. Brandon Weeden has never been my guy, as you guys know. I said that he was going to, whatever success he was going to have in the NFL, he would have his most success under this system, and we would know by halfway through this season where he's going to be at. Am I saying that Brandon Weeden cannot get better? Absolutely not. If he can't get better, then he has no place in this league whatsoever. I think we've seen that. So yeah, I think over the course of a season, under a course of a season of coaching and training and building him up, he can get better. Does that mean that his ceiling is not what it is? Does that mean that his upside is not what it is? No, it does not, because I think we've seen that. I mean, yesterday, a lot of the bad, and I'll give you the second half. He got whipped on. Listen, let's not let the offensive line off there at all. The offensive line was Swiss cheese yesterday. He got hit 16 times. He got sacked 6 times. He threw, but here's the thing. His 3 interceptions were in the first half. At that point, he had only been sacked once. So a lot of that, to me, says that it came later in the game when the defense was pinning their ears back and going after him. So in the first half, he wasn't well. And for anybody that wants to say that those balls went off receivers' hands, which, by the way, one of those, I do fault Brandon Weeden for the way he threw the ball. But if you want to talk about that, there were still a couple more that the Dolphins let slip through their hands that were legitimate interceptions. So really, one balances off the other. Now, and as we've seen, you can take Josh Gordon not being there. Absolutely, that makes a difference. But you had Jordan Cameron. He was going over the top a little bit. You weren't going. Once it seemed like they really pulled back after a couple of interceptions on any kind of challenges down the field. And as well, you've got to question the use of Trent Richardson, regardless of the final numbers of where he ended up. To only be ran as many times as he was absolutely not what the game plan was, and what any of us who predicted a Browns victory, I think we all built it on the assumption of 25 or so carries for Trent Richardson there, and you get almost half of that. And you see that they really gave up on an attempt to establish any kind of a run. Now, I'll counter that by saying the Dolphins didn't have to respect the run, and they piled up on it in the second half based on the way they were having their way with the passing game and Brandon Weeden. But Brandon Weeden in the second half was a wounded animal. He was being attacked. I mean, I have issues with several things in the second half as well, such as fourth and whatever on the last play of the game, when if you don't do something, the game's over. How do you throw the ball out of bounds? Those are the kind of things that speak to the heart and the mind. And again, listen, I'm not trying to pile up on Brandon Weeden. I've made my thoughts on him very clear, and I think this season he's going to be a placeholder. I think that the front office knows all the things that we're talking about right now. We're going to see where things go. But again, the offensive line, it doesn't matter who your quarterback is. The offensive line has got to buck up. I mean, Cousins yesterday, you could have gave up 10 sacks if he doesn't perhaps hold on 4 different plays, because they were just getting destroyed. And absolutely Mitchell Schwartz as well. Cameron Wake having his way, that they were at it. And that was the one thing that they came in known for last year, was being able to get the pressure on. And speaking of the pressure, let's go on the other side of the ball with the Browns, because defensively, for the first 2.5 quarters, they were getting at it. They brought what was advertised. Ray Horton was getting a pass rush. We saw actually the 4 sacks that the Browns got. I thought it was interesting. All players that they signed in the offseason, all players that they brought in, all the linebackers. So it was good to see that, man. I think we see that front's going to be stout. Desmond Bryant, I think a lot of people underestimated what he's going to bring to that front there. And think about this. They were impressive defensively without Rubin, without Mingo. So there's a couple of guys there that are going to even be added to that. Paul Kruger looked pretty good. Quentin Groves had a sack. Again, that defense. But as they adjusted in the second half, they started coming with more max protect. They started coming with more blocking, and they ended up picking up those rushes, picking up no matter how many the Browns put in the box, and you were still left with one-on-one coverage. You were still left with problems and the intermediate routes, it wasn't so much over the top, because you got beat on the play to heart line, and there was a few other chances I think that Miami missed on to go over the top, but it was those intermediate routes yesterday that were really killing the Browns. I mean, and the third downs, we talked about that as well at the halftime show yesterday. I believe they had 5 of 9 in the first half. They played a little bit better in the second half, but they still ended up going, I believe it was 9 of 16, it was about 50% that they gave up on third downs. You can't have that. Every time our defense had them in a position where you had them in a third and long, where you had them on the ropes and you could have got off the field. And that's the one of the trademarks of Ray Horton's defense. Last year, they were top 5 in getting off the field on third downs. They weren't able to do that yesterday. They kept giving up the intermediate pass, the 9-yard slant, the little 8-10-yard hitch there that was getting the first downs, keeping the chains moving, keeping that defense worn down. Now there is where I say, sounds like we're repeating things from last year, because that's exactly what one of the biggest things we were talking about last year. It doesn't matter about your scheme and your players and how deep you are if they're out there for that long. The Browns, for the beginning part of the second half, did a better job of balancing the time of possession back out. They had the ball longer than they did for a while, but still, it just seemed like no matter what, it was not sustained drives. It was keeping that defense on the field until you get what you got. And it all adds up to a 23-10 Dolphins victory in a game that everyone said, no, we all talked about how the Browns could lose the game, and it's exactly how they did lose the game. So it wasn't a big surprise. It wasn't big rocket science. The game plan for how the Browns could lose was there, as well as how they could win. And they really seemed like in the beginning part of the game they were following the right game plan, and things fell off considerably as it got later and later. And so, I said it yesterday on Facebook, I'm not starting a fire at all. Hey, look, they could go to Baltimore next week and punch the Ravens in the mouth. The entire AFC North. Hey, I'll tell you what. I will say this, after watching all 4 AFC North games yesterday, the Cleveland Browns will not finish last in this division, because Pittsburgh has got that spot all wrapped up, in my opinion. And I know it's only one game, but their preseason struggles carried right on over. And, matter of fact, amplified even more. I'm curious to see how that ship goes for the Steelers throughout the season. But in no way am I abandoning ship here. But I think we all knew coming in, my prediction was 7-9 for the Browns. And I think one of those 7-9 was clearly anybody who had whatever, whether you said 4-12, 5, 6, 7, it doesn't matter what your prediction was. I think we all had the Dolphins circled as one that you had to win in order for your projected schedule to be right. So that right there already dampens what could be a good season, because you go on the road to Baltimore, you go on the road to Minnesota, and Adrian Peterson, while he slowed down, we saw what he did on that first carry of the game yesterday, and I looked at that and said, man, now there's going to be a test. The next 2 weeks, let's see if it was the Miami Dolphins running game or what it was with this front seven, because you're going to get a chance to try to stop Ray Rice. And if you think the Ravens aren't going to be ticked off about the way they started their season, they sure are. They got spanked. So you're going to have an opportunity there with Ray Rice, and then, of course, all-day AP going to be out there. So a chance to see about this front seven and what they're all about. We're going to see about this team regardless how they are. That to me is something, too. You can't pack it in the first week. You got to see if these guys go out there and bounce back, go to Baltimore, show some pride, and that's going to be interesting, because that's all we can do at this point. See how they react, see how they coach them up. Hey, and I'm sure the coaches, if they're worth their salt, they're acknowledging their own mistakes right now. If they're not, hey, maybe they're not, but I think they would be. I think they'll see some missed opportunities, and we'll find out about that as we get ready to head into Baltimore. Matter of fact, in just a minute when we go to the break here, I got my man John McMullen coming on from the Sports Network. I want to talk to him about his takeaways from this Cleveland Browns first week of the season, as well as around the entire league as well. Matter of fact, let's get the break out of the way. We're going to keep talking football when we come back. Browns fans and NFL fans. First week in the books for most of you. Of course, there's a couple of Monday night games tonight, but John McMullen from the Sports Network joins me when we come back here from the break. We'll get you a news update, and we'll talk about the Browns and the Dolphins and the week that was in the NFL and so much more. When we come back, don't go anywhere. Live here on the Sports Fix.
When it comes to Cleveland sports, we go from
"You can't touch this"
to
"I can't watch this."
So listen to The Fix. It's easier on the eyes.
It's an addiction. The Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Business owners and professionals, do you want to take your business, your product, your team, your event to the next level? You want to advertise right here with the Sports Fix. Our listeners are among the most loyal listeners, terrestrial or internet. The Sports Fix universe is not only the radio show, but tens of thousands of fans on Facebook and Twitter. Email me, Jerry Myers, thesportsfix@AOL.com. That's thesportsfix@AOL.com. And let me help you swing for the fences and hit it out of the park right here on the Sports Fix.
I'm here again with Bill Opolich from Quick Lane at Valley Ford. Bill, what's new in the Quick Lane?
Battery rebate. Summer is just as hard on your battery as the winter. Quick Lane at Valley Ford will test your battery at no charge. And if you need a battery, we have a $25 mail-in rebate on the purchase of a tested tough Motorcraft battery starting at $79.95.
Wow, that's a great deal, Bill. Tell me more.
Our brake rebate is still on until June 30th. $25 per axle with the purchase and installation of Motorcraft brake pads, as well as offering a $50 rebate when you purchase $250 or more and charge your Ford Genuine credit card. Some exclusions apply. As always, we have a low price guarantee on all our tires. If you find the same price within 30 days, we will refund the difference. Stop in, let us check your battery and top off your washer fluid.
Where do I have to go to get those great deals?
Come to Quick Lane at Valley Ford on Canal Road between Rockside and Granger in Valley View, just 10 minutes from downtown Cleveland. We're open at 7 every day. Open late Monday through Thursday till 9, Friday till 6, and Saturday till 2.
Go to quicklane.com/Valley Ford Truck.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Harry Buffalo. Harry Buffalo North Olmsted presents bike nights every Monday, all summer long. $3 beers and drinks for bikers, $5 pizza and more. Harry Buffalo, join the herd.
Hey Cleveland, this is Anderson Varejão of the Cleveland Cavaliers. You are listening to the Sports Fix.
News break.
Good morning, I'm Bob Picozzi. Like every NFL team, the Giants love playing at home, but they also love playing at AT&T Stadium in Dallas. For the first time in 5 visits to the Cowboys' new home, the Giants did not win. Tony Romo completed 36 of 49 passes for 263 yards and 2 touchdowns in a 36-31 Dallas win.
More than anything, you're just thinking about trying to get a win to start the season. You know, that game 1's an important game. You know, that's a good football team. They've been a good football team for a long time. They've obviously had success over the last 5 or 6 years, and you can see why. They fought hard. They played to the end, and it was a good battle. Glad we came out on top.
The Giants had 6 turnovers. David Wilson, their first-round draft pick a year ago, fumbled twice. One of the fumbles was returned for a touchdown. And ESPN's Adam Schefter is reporting the Giants will work out former Broncos and Ravens running back Willis McGahee tomorrow, but that workout has been planned since last Friday. The Texans were 8-2 in September during the last 3 seasons. Houston opens its season tonight in San Diego, 10:20 Eastern Time on ESPN in the first half of our Monday night doubleheader. Washington will host Philadelphia, 6:55 Eastern on ESPN.
Quickie is changing the game. Players will still go for touchdowns, home runs, 3-pointers, you name it. But when it comes to cleaning tools, it's a whole new game. Put a Quickie broom in your hand, and you're a pro that'll get the job done fast the first time. Pros demand it, you deserve it. Available at Lowe's.
You're listening to the Sports Fix.
Ain't that right? Welcome back to the Sports Fix, live here on the sportsfix.net. Ain't nothing like the real thing. And finally, I'm kicking off the week talking to my man. He joins us each and every Monday here on the Sports Fix, John McMullen. And now we're talking about the real thing, some real football, Daddy, as the NFL season, of course, kicked off this past weekend, not just the Browns, but around the league. Looking forward to getting my man here on the phone lines. We'll open up the phone lines back to you towards the end of the show. We're talking Browns and Dolphins and the NFL Week 1 live here on the Sports Fix. J-Rocc with you. Thank you so much for joining me. And as I said, on the phone lines right now, my man from the Sports Network, John McMullen. John, how you doing on this Week 1 Monday, wrapping up the first week of the NFL?
Doing well. We finally got Week 1 under our belt. A couple games to go tonight, but it's nice to be playing some real football.
Absolutely. I thought that I was putting the music beds together, and I said, bam, there we go. Ain't nothing like the real thing. And it started off with a bang. We'll get back to the Browns here in a second because I definitely want to talk to you some more about the Browns and the Dolphins. But things kicked off last Thursday night with Peyton Manning going all Peyton Manning on the Baltimore Ravens. and what an incredible performance there. What was your thoughts there? And where do you stand on the Broncos? Of course, I've got them. I had them coming out of the AFC, taking on Atlanta in the Super Bowl. What are your thoughts after what we saw with Wes Welker added to that Broncos offense?
Well, you talk about 7 touchdown passes, which is basically the first time it's been done in 44 years. So it's an impressive performance. I think we all understand the Broncos are certainly one of the favorites in the AFC, if not the favorite. It shapes up to be a weak division, so I don't think Denver's going to have a real difficult time making the postseason. So maybe that first 6 weeks without Von Miller isn't going to be as difficult as we all thought it would be. Especially, when you talk about Wes Welker, also out of nowhere comes this, big tight end, Julius Thomas, who also scored 2 touchdowns. So, they have a plethora of weapons, and they're going to be very difficult to deal with.
Talking to John McMullen from the Sports Network, I'm with you there. That's going to be something to watch. Hey, Baltimore as well. We talked about where they were going to be, looking at where they were going to compare to last year. I thought for the first half of the game, the defense surprised me. I mean, obviously they had the lead going into halftime there, but as we saw, and we saw around the AFC North as the entire division lost yesterday, they kind of looked old and slow in the second half, and as Denver just continued to rack it up and pull away later in that game.
Yeah, it was certainly a shootout, and obviously it's tough to win a shootout on the road when Peyton Manning's the other quarterback. I thought Joe Flacco performed well. I think the key part of that game is when Jacoby Jones went down with a sprained knee, got hit by his own teammate on the punt return. They were already struggling a bit without the slot receiver. We all know Anquan Bolden had that phenomenal game in San Francisco. So he's gone, and Dennis Pitt is injured. So the one thing Baltimore has to find is sort of that slot guy who can move the chains on third down. But early in that game, they were looking very good getting the ball outside to Torrey Smith and Jacoby Jones. So I think, I'm not saying they would have won the game, but I think they would have stayed a little bit closer if he was able to be on the field for the entire game.
Yeah, I'll tell you what, I think this year, and this is going to be odd to say about a Baltimore Ravens team, but I think their offense is going to be ahead of their defense this year. But that's also to be expected. We talked about all the losses they had. Let's stay in the AFC North right there, because as I said, the entire division dropped a game. Browns missed an opportunity to catch an easy game up on the rest of the division. Pittsburgh yesterday, I think, look, Baltimore played the Broncos, and that game is what it was, but because we talked about the kind of the changing of the guard in the division, but Pittsburgh, I think that was one of the poorest opening game performances I've seen from a Steelers team in a long time.
Yeah, and we talked about that before. I don't think this is your typical Steelers team coming into the season. I think they were headed in a downward trajectory, and that was a very, very poor performance. The defense wasn't that bad, but offensively, the Steelers just looked lost. And to make matters worse, Marquise Pouncey goes down with the torn ACL. Stevens Howling goes down with a torn ACL. They also lost Larry Foote, likely for the season with the biceps tear. So, this, as bad as the loss was, that wasn't even a half of it for the Steelers to lose 3 really, really important players to their team. And the one thing that was so un-Steeler-like above everything else was their inability to run the ball. I mean, just couldn't get anything going. 32 yards total. When is the last time you heard of a Steelers team rushing the ball for 32 yards? So there's some issues in Pittsburgh, and I don't think that's going to be the typical Steelers team that everyone is generally afraid of. We talked about it before, with the losing James Harrison moving on to Cincinnati. I don't know how much you can count on Troy Polamalu moving forward. But yesterday, obviously, it was the offense that was the issue.
And then, of course, the last team, before we get to the Browns, the Cincinnati Bengals there, and they were, we talked about the focus on them being with Hard Knocks and a lot of people projecting them to kind of shine in the division this year. And, I don't know if you necessarily call it an upset. Maybe some people would, but the Bears yesterday, defending home turf Mark Trestman, who was in the mix for the Browns head coaching job in the offseason, ended up there in Chicago. I mean, they upset the Bengals 24-21 kicking off the season there.
Yeah, I thought it was a bit of an upset. I thought the Bengals would be able to get it done because it was Mark Trestman's first game, as you mentioned, and that's a big stage. But, the Bears are a very difficult team to beat. Chicago, Cincinnati was in the game, lost it in the fourth quarter. A.J. Green looked absolutely like a beast. So this is the one loss in the division where I would look at and say, well, you lost, but it wasn't that bad. Maybe a logical loss against a good team on the road. I don't think that'll affect the Bengals moving forward. They would have liked to have gotten a more consistent rushing game. Andy Dalton played very well. As we mentioned, A.J. Green just ate the Bears up. So I think as a whole, it's disappointing that Cincinnati wasn't able to get it done, but I don't think they're going to be pushing the panic button.
No, absolutely. But again, it starts off the division. Here's an opportunity with the three teams that are a lot of people pictured above you. If you're Cleveland, all drop their opening game. It's only one game, of course, but, a psychological good opportunity to start your season kind of dropped by the Browns there. Browns and Dolphins, what were your thoughts there watching that game and what you take away from what we saw good from the Browns as well as negatively as well?
Well, I thought the concern was mainly the offensive line and the game plan a little bit. I think we all thought the Browns would rely on Trent Richardson and go from there. And anytime you see Brandon Weeden throw the ball 53 times, I don't think that's the mathematical formula to win for the Cleveland Browns at this stage of the game. So I question when you're up at 7-6 at halftime how that runs off the rails so quickly. I think maybe there was a little panic when things started to go badly in the third quarter, and that's to be expected from a rookie head coach. But these are veteran coordinators and North Turner and Horton on defense. So I was a little surprised that things went so badly in the second half. But the offensive line is where I really look at and say, something's got to improve, and it's got to improve quickly.
Absolutely. Yesterday, of course, Chud was questioned about O'Neal Cousins with those, not only with the sacks coming through, but the 4 penalties as well. And he basically said point blank, he's the best of what we've got. So he's just got to get it better. We've got to coach him up. So until you get Laveau and Pinkston back in the mix there, and you get some of those guys that were your scheduled guys there back in, I think the Browns offensive line can be patched up over the next few weeks once you're able to get guys back in their normal positions. But as you said, in the second half as well, I mean, Brandon Weeden was hit 16 times, sacked 6 times. It wasn't just Cameron Wake, although he was a beast. They were all over the place. And in the second half, really just pinned. I mean, only one of those sacks was in the first half. So they just pinned their ears back. And at that point, they didn't respect the run. They didn't respect the pass. And they just went to town on defense. Talk about Brandon Weeden's day a little bit there, because to me, his first half, he started off the game. I thought things looked good. And then right off the bat, they go over the top into double coverage and he gets his first interception. And it just seemed like things just started to change and his day didn't get much better. And really, he wasn't under assault until the second half.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't play well, let's not sugarcoat it. And but at the same time, I don't think he was put in a lot of chances to succeed. I mean, when I look at a guy who throws the ball 53 times, and I think his long for the entire game was 22 yards, so that tells me a couple things. He's not getting a lot of chances to go down the field. That's number one. Number two, when you do go down the field, you're not very accurate. But to me, when the Dolphins started loading the box in the second half and really bringing it, I don't think North Turner reacted to that very well in numerous ways. The fact that he went to the pass so often, the fact that he gave up on running the ball. sometimes it's a situation where you have to keep, even if you get a 2-yard gain, a 1-yard gain, you have to keep trying it, just to say, hey, we're willing to do this, and we're not. If you're going to load the box like this, we're going to take advantage with play action. We're going to do some things. I don't think he did a good job with that. And, to put a second-year quarterback in, and let's, point out the fact that the guy on the opposite end of the field was also a second-year quarterback and performed very, very well. But to put a guy back there with Cameron Wake pinning his ears back, as you mentioned, and realizing I think that injury, you mentioned the injury to Laval, that's one of those underrated injuries that I think people don't think about a lot. But I think that hurts so much the team in so many levels. It's just a sort of like that snowball effect that it affects the guys next to you. It affects the fact you have to bring in O'Neal Cousins, as you mentioned, who's just not ready to play in the NFL. So, it was a lot of things, and it's disappointing when you sit there at halftime and you say, well, we're in this game, we're at home, it's time to get something done against a team that wasn't playing all that well until the second half.
Absolutely. As you sit here, of course, we're talking to John McMullen from the Sports Network. I'm J-Rocc. You're listening to the Sports Fix. We're breaking down the Browns and the Dolphins yesterday. Amazing when you look that they almost averaged as many yards per rush as yards per pass yesterday just because of the sheer volume of those passes. Vishon chimed in the chat room and said that he doesn't think that Trent Richardson's the kind of back that you can just keep feeding and feeding and feeding. My point, and I saw John with a similar point in the chat room as well, that until you do it, you don't know. You've got to, like you said, you've got to feed him, even if it's 1 or 2 yard gains over and over. You've got to give him 25 to 30 carries before you can judge whether or not he can do it and whether or not it's going to be successful.
Yeah, in fact, I would agree with that. I would disagree with the people in the chat room, because to me, Trent Richardson's that kind of guy. He isn't the home run hitter. He's not Chris Johnson. He's not going to threaten to go 80 yards. What he is what they call a bell cow back who can take the ball 25, 30 times, and then in the fourth quarter, hopefully you've worn down the opposition front. I think exactly that's the type of running back he is, and I think that's exactly what North Turner didn't do yesterday. He had 13 carries. That's not Trent Richardson's game.
No, absolutely. And as we said, in the second half, it just went away. My thoughts were, even when they were pinning their ears back and coming after that, I thought, man, if you hit these guys with a delayed draw or even a couple of those shovel passes to Trent Richardson, I'm like, man, they're just asking to get beat there. And it just seemed like, and it just continued to be, drop back in the shotgun, and Whedon was just, the more he got hit, the more he took. And I bring back to what I talked about last segment before you joined us. Third down efficiency on both sides of the ball killed the Browns. 50% for the Dolphins, 8 of 16. Meanwhile, the Browns only 1 of 14 for the game. Could not keep their offense on the field, and that's what stopped a good Browns defensive performance from staying strong at the end, because they were out there so long. Talk to me real quick, John. Hey, the Dolphins ran the ball 23 times, and yet the Browns held them to less than 1 yard per carry. Second best in franchise history, only 20 rushing yards. What are your thoughts on the Browns front seven stopping the run? Because that's been a problem for them for the last few years.
Well, I think that's it, yeah. And I think Desmond Bryant was the one guy who really stood out as a whole in that front seven. But you bring up a good point, because as you mentioned, Miami couldn't run the ball at all, but they still employed the run. They ran it 10 more times than Cleveland did. So when you look at Ryan Tannehill throwing the ball 38 times, Brandon Whedon 53, there's your difference in the plays. It's basically an even game. And if you look at it, Cleveland actually had more total yards than Miami in the game. As you mentioned, though, on the most important down in football, they came up short on both ends. But there's the exact point. Miami put the threat in mind, and even Joe Philbin actually already talked about it today, about the inability to run the football, and they need to fix that moving forward. But the fact that you're doing it keeps it in the mind of the defense, and the fact that it's still an option. And I think that was a big mistake for Cleveland to take that off the table as an option.
And that absolutely ended up working that defense down and wearing them down. And the opposite, as you said, for Miami there. I mean, you could just see the difference as that game wore down. And it ended up, time of possession still ended up, even with the Browns closing the gap because of having the ball so much late in the game, still ended up with nearly 5 more minutes for the Miami Dolphins. And that's a recipe for failure there no matter what. I said I'm interested to see the next 2 weeks because I'm not 100% sold on Miami's rushing attack. I want to see the Browns and what they do against Ray Rice and Adrian Peterson, and just as a gauge to see where it's at. As you said, though, Desmond Bryant looked good. All the free agents brought in on defense, made some effort yesterday, got some things done, whether it was Quentin Groves with the sack, Paul Kruger was all over the place, a couple of sacks and a couple of tackles for loss for Desmond Bryant, like you said. And to me, you take hope as well that Rubin didn't play yesterday, who's one of the better guys up front. As well, your top draft pick, Mingo, he's still not in the rotation yet either.
Yeah, and that's going to be a big lift when he does come back. And the defensive backfield gave up some big plays, but I think you do take optimism in the fact that the front seven did play well overall. And that's just the nature of football. You're going to give up big plays down the field occasionally. That's the way the game is skewing. Unfortunately, for those of us who like defense, it's they've handcuffed those guys so much in the back end that it's so difficult. We talked about Peyton Manning earlier, 7 touchdowns. So many, whether it's Matthew Stafford yesterday or Drew Brees, you see these huge numbers put up by passers around the league. So if you're facing a competent quarterback, you're going to give up some serious passing yards. So. That's not as big as a concern for me moving forward. And I think, as I said, I like the plan as a whole that Ray Horton put together. I don't like the plan Norv Turner put together. And, we'll see how it moves forward from here.
So let's talk about that as we wrap things up here, talking about moving forward. Now, this is the first week during the regular season that the Browns get to break down film, see what to me, I think week 1 is kind of I don't want to say a crapshoot, but I think it's interesting from every team's perspective because you didn't have a base. Now you've got a base. You know where you're at in the regular season. You can compare 1 week to the next. So I'm interested to see how they coach up, how they get things together. What do you think next week now? You've got Baltimore, a team that's definitely not happy with how they started their season. The Browns, they played pretty well last year when they went on the road to Baltimore. Actually, Brandon Weeden, it was one of his better games that he had late, at least, bringing the Browns almost back. What do you think here? What do the Browns need to do to have a chance to go to Baltimore and, I guess you could say, upset the Ravens?
Well, I think this is a bad spot for the Browns simply because, Baltimore was basically embarrassed in their, season opener on the road. They're coming home. They're traditionally a tremendously strong team in Baltimore. As we said, they're angry. They're upset. They had extra time to prepare for the game because the opener was on Thursday. This is a really bad situation for Cleveland, but especially going on the road, and I can't emphasize this enough. It's time, when you have a young quarterback, you have to give him more help, even more so on the road than at home, and you have to establish that running game. And you can't give up, even if you get down by 2 touchdowns. You can't just automatically say, okay, we're just going to throw the ball 50-plus times. You have to stay. And I understand when I say this, I understand this is a passing league, and I'm not trying to say it by any stretch of the imagination. You don't have to throw the ball to win because you do. But when you have a young quarterback like this, it's desirous to give him far more balance than what Norv Turner did yesterday.
And I'll tell you, you talk about that. I understand Chudzinski being in his rookie season, but that kind of surprised me there with Norv being a veteran there, calling the plays a little bit the way they got off the game plan. Hey, like I said, just like you coach players up, I'm sure coaches coach themselves up. Norv Turner's been around. He knows what he did wrong yesterday, too. I'm interested to see how they adjust their game plan as well heading into Baltimore. That's going to be interesting. And, of course, throughout the week, we'll continue to look through to that. And Dr. Football Bill Chickus joins us tomorrow, and next week we'll join you as well. John, we'll see how week 2 broke down. But as we're wrapping things up here, give me your week 1, not just the Browns, but the entire NFL. What's your biggest surprises of week 1 here of the NFL and what we saw?
Well, biggest surprise probably was how well Reggie Bush fit in with Detroit, and I think that's going to be a really nice move for them going forward because now they have that alternative to Calvin Johnson. The Vikings were playing a ton of cover 2 against them yesterday, and they stopped Calvin Johnson. But, Matthew Stafford just dumped the ball underneath to Reggie Bush, and he killed Minnesota with that. And so now they have it. We talked about that balance. Detroit seems to have that balance now, and there could be a team that, remember, they were a playoff team 2 years ago before they fell off the table last year. So I think that was a big surprise to me. And I thought we were going to see a little bit of a market correction. I called it with these young quarterbacks, and I thought after a full off season of watching film, I think opposing defensive coordinators were going to devise ways to stop these guys a little bit. But I'll tell you what, Colin Kaepernick looked phenomenal yesterday. It was almost, if you think back to the playoff game when he ran for 180 yards against the Packers, and this time he did it through the air, 400-plus yards, and he was just almost perfect throwing the ball. So it doesn't look like there's going to be any market correction, at least with Colin Kaepernick.
Yeah, and you talk about those young quarterbacks. A couple more made pretty decent first impressions on themselves. E.J. Manuel and Geno Smith, both with pretty good first impressions there for rookies. Perhaps another couple of rookies. I was always, interested in E.J. Manuel when the Browns were drafting this year as well. Vashon in the chat room, a big one on there. And he brought up a good point, too. Terrell Pryor as well yesterday with a good game on the ground as well. But a couple of good starts for those rookie quarterbacks as well. Perhaps going to work on adding their name to that group over the last 2 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's the way the league is going. It's the dual threat is in vogue now. And obviously, guys like E.J. Manuel, particularly, and Terrell Pryor. I mean, as we stand here today, through week 1 with 2 games to go, Terrell Pryor is the leading rusher in the NFL. So, he's raw. He's going to struggle. But I think for a team that doesn't have a lot of talent, I think Oakland made the right decision going with him over Matt Flynn, simply because to win games, they're going to have to get some of those crazy plays, and Terrell Pryor's the kind of quarterback that can do that for them.
And I'll tell you what, last question for you. Who were your biggest, perhaps, letdowns in week 1? Perhaps the 1 or 2 teams that you thought had the biggest letdown in the first week of the season?
Well, I think the polar opposite in the Detroit game was the Vikings, who were they looked like an antiquated team, basically a cover 2 defensive team, which is an antiquated defense in today's NFL. And the mentality of running the ball, even though they have the best running back in the world, we all know that. But, they're running 55 plays a game, basically, when everybody else is trying to run 90. So I think they're basically a 1970s football team playing in the, 2013. I don't think it works. I don't think the philosophy works. And the New York Giants, 6 turnovers against the Dallas Cowboys. They'd never lost in AT&T Stadium until last night. And let's face it, they should have won the game. Dallas needed 6 turnovers to win by less than a touchdown, and the fact that David Wilson coughed it up twice. They're having Willis McGahee in this week to work out, and they might bring him in to play running back. So, the Manning Bowl is this week, so it'll be Eli versus Peyton. And the Giants, coming off 6 turnovers, are certainly going to have to turn things around quickly.
And I'll tell you what, I heard Brandon Jacobs' name as well in that mix there as well, as they're trying to figure out what to do in that running back position there. That was a good performance last night by that Dallas defense, that's for sure. That Dallas defense almost beat me in my fantasy league by itself, let me tell you. All right, John McMullen from the Sports Network wrapping things up. Hey, man, thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we'll see here. I'm really interested to see some of the storylines that began this week, how they progress through the rest of this season.
Hey, thanks for having me, Jerry.
You got it, my man. John McMullen from the Sports Network. He's with us each and every Monday live right here. Speaking of each and every Monday live, Dan Wismar, my next guest, joins us live. Going to go to the phone lines when we come back and talk to Dan from the Cleveland Fan as we talk about the Ohio State Buckeyes. Big victory this weekend. big, deep breath taken by Buckeye fans with Braxton Miller's injury. We'll talk about Kenny G, Braxton Miller, the Buckeyes, and so much more when we come back. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan joins us talking Ohio State Buckeye football next, live here on the Sports Fix.
We here at the Sports Fix are very in-depth when we interview the sports stars.
Oh, I saw the whole thing, dude. First you were all like, whoa, and then we were like, whoa, and then you were like, whoa. What are you talking about? You got serious thrill issues, dude. Oh, awesome. Ooh.
Maybe not, but you should still listen.
It's an addiction. The Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by GV Art and Design. It's not just a shirt, it's a statement. GVArtwork.com.
You love Cleveland, and you already know how much we love Cleveland. You know who else loves Cleveland? GV Art and Design. Everyday fans, you and I wear our pride on our sleeves. Now, you can wear your pride on your chest. GV Art and Design has one of the hottest Cleveland sporting lines. Log on right now to GVArtwork.com. Check out all of their fantastic designs.
And don't forget, use the sales code FIX to save 10% on your total purchase.
Follow GVArtwork.com on Facebook. And remember, GV Art and Design, it's not just a shirt, it's a statement. Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all day or all week to get in on the fun. The party doesn't stop when we go off the air all week long. The Sports Fix social media sites are your one-stop shop for all things Cleveland sports. Jump over to Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix, and become a fan today because we love fans and they create some of the best sports talk in town, Daddy. You'll enjoy talking to your fellow Cleveland sports fans on the Sports Fix fan page. And if Twitter's your thing, well, you know how we do it. Tweet with us at the Sports Fix CLE. It's that simple.
Twitter.com/TheSportsFixCLE, baby.
Chat live with the crew during all your favorite Cleveland sports events, tickets and contests and trivia and so much more. Get with us today, the Sports Fix on social media, Facebook.com/TheSportsFix. Tweet with us at the Sports Fix CLE. Join the Sports Fix on Facebook and Twitter today.
The engines are cranking and purring, and that can only mean one thing. Bike nights are back at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. Rev up your hogs and head on down to Harry Buffalo North Olmsted every Monday night. Enjoy $3 drinks and beers, $5 pizzas, and crazy wing specials for all bikers, all on their open patio. Woo-hoo! Hot bikes, good friends, and great times are waiting for you. 4824 Great Northern Boulevard, right outside Great Northern Mall. Monday bike nights at Harry Buffalo, the proud sponsor of the Sports Fix.
Hey, Cleveland, this is Ed Doherty, voice of San Ignatius Wildcat football, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix, streaming live here on the sportsfix.net. Man, why do I got a feeling we're heading towards overtime today? J-Rocc with you. We are rocking hot and heavy. Hey, it's Monday. It's a game breakdown Monday. We had the Indians rocking down at Progressive Field. The Browns kick off their season, and the Buckeyes. Hey, tell you what, people's worlds almost burned down as they held their breath with Braxton Miller coming out of the game. The Buckeyes win, but obviously the health of Braxton Miller and going forward there, the bigger concern for Buckeye fans as Ohio State defeats San Diego State over the weekend. Joining us now, as he does each and every Monday and Wednesday, Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan. As soon as I pull his audio up here, Dan, how you doing on this Monday afternoon after another Buckeyes victory?
Doing great, Jerry. Glad to be back with you. Sort of wearing the black armband here for my Browns, but we at least have the Buckeyes to celebrate.
Let's talk about that real quick before we dive into the Buckeyes, about them Browns. What were your takeaways yesterday from the kickoff of the Browns season? Because I know you're a big Browns supporter.
Well, it's just distressing to go out there and watch them lay an egg again when the hopes are so high, and all the guys that sit around me down there in Section 129. It's difficult to go through it 14 out of 15 years. So it's just depressing to me. Let's talk about the Buckeyes. They're the oasis in the desert of Cleveland sports.
There we go. That's why, as I was putting the show together here, I'm like, you know what? We're going to start out talking about the Tribe. Then we're going to talk about the Browns. Then we're going to come back with the Buckeyes and the Tribe to end the show, because there's no way we can sit here and just go out on a negative note about those Buckeyes, though. Yeah, they came away with the victory, much expected, and seemed like a more improved performance than in week one. Cleaned up a lot of things, but of course, the biggest pause comes with the injury to Braxton Miller as he comes out on the first drive of the game.
Right, yeah, everybody was, of course, swallowing hard when Braxton's lying there on the ground with a big Aztec lion on top of his head. Turned out the shot that he took to the left side of his left knee from a San Diego State player was the one that did all the damage. But, yeah, you just got to hand all the kudos to Kenny Guyton. I mean, he comes in and doesn't seem to miss a beat. He leads the team. He sets personal highs in all categories when he had to. Certain things that you could arguably say that Kenny Guyton does better than Braxton Miller. Running the offense, for example, his decision-making there, is the precision with just running that offense. I didn't see a lot of mistakes that Kenny Guyton made the other day.
Absolutely. That's what kind of stuck out to me, was how smoothly things ran. And I brought up that, Urban Meyer said about him, this is the best backup quarterback in football. I think he really went a long way on the field to proving that could be a very accurate fact, because, as you said, he went out there and in some ways ran the offense even smoother. Really, very rare that you see little step down, no matter how good a backup quarterback is. And that should give Ohio State fans, hope through the season that because Braxton Miller's style, we know that a scrambling, running guy always leaves himself open to injuries, whether small or big. That should give you hope that an injury to Braxton Miller in no way will sideline what you're doing this season, hopefully.
Well, at least it won't do that against the San Diego States of the
world. There we go. There we go.
I think that everybody knows that this team doesn't get where they want to be without Braxton Miller healthy. Certainly Urban Meyer knows that. The good news, I guess, is that this morning in his press conference, Meyer seemed no more concerned about Miller's long-term status than he did after the game Saturday. He says he's day-to-day, that if he's healthy, he'll play. They're not going to hold anything back. So at least outwardly, Meyer seemed confident or not terribly concerned about the long-term effects. And, of course, that's great news for Buckeye fans. I guess he said that Miller wanted to go back in the game Saturday and probably could have in a pinch, but clearly they didn't need him after the first quarter. They were up 21-0, and San Diego State looked as bad as they had looked the week before. I didn't think they would be as bad as they looked, losing by 3 touchdowns to Eastern Illinois, but they came out and proved me wrong. It was obvious after the first quarter that they had no offensive punch that was going to worry the Ohio State defense, which, to its credit, did step up and play a better game.
Absolutely, and as we said, that's the kind of game, the cleaner game that you want to see when you're playing these teams that you're playing here as you're kicking off the season. The running game looked balanced as well, averaging nearly 7 yards a carry there. Philly Brown with a couple of big receptions, 6 for 73 yards and a few touchdowns. So as you said, a lot of we talked about cleaning up in the first week. You saw that even with the scrambling that comes along with going to your backup quarterback. And as you said, good news hopefully going forward there when it comes to Braxton Miller. But I thought we saw some bright spots all the way around here as they continue to use these early games to tune themselves, as we know, for when Big Ten play hits.
Right. The defense especially was a real positive. I think Meyer said after the game that he was, at least before having looked at the film, he was very positive for how the linebacker play looked. He zeroed in, of course, on Curtis Grant, the inside linebacker, the guy who was the biggest unknown quantity, I guess you'd say, coming into the season. He had a good spring, but really doing it in game action, and he really did look pretty good. He had, I think, 6 or 7 tackles, and looked like he was stepping up and playing physical in the run game. They stuffed everything San Diego State had in the run game. I think they held them to 64 yards rushing net. Second week in a row they've been under 75 yards net rushing for the opponent. Going to be a lot different in 2 weeks or 3 weeks when Wisconsin comes to town. a little bit different caliber running game there, and we'll see how that holds up. But I guess so far the reviews are good for the linebacking core, and Josh Perry as well, Shazier, of course, always seems to look good, and so the run defense, the up-the-middle defense for Ohio State, which was really the big question mark. How would the defensive tackles, the inside linebackers, how would they look? And so far, that's been a positive.
And I'll tell you what, let's look ahead now. You talk about that defense. They're going to be tested by the tempo of Cal here. But as you get ready to head out there and do that, what are your thoughts on the quarterback situation? Now, do you give, because I've heard some people beginning to make the arguments already that you go with Kenny Guyton this week and you don't take any chances with the health of Braxton Miller, because you would think theoretically that you can handle Cal with what you've got with Kenny G. Just what are your thoughts on that? Do you think they're giving some thought to not playing Braxton Miller this week?
Well, no way to know what their thought is, Jerry, but I certainly would err on the side of caution. I think if Miller is not 100%, I don't think I would play him. I don't know about being able to handle Cal without him. Cal gave him a tough game last year, although Cal lost quite a bit, and they certainly haven't looked too tough in their first couple outings. They hung with Northwestern in week 1 for a half a game, but yeah, I certainly I think would err on the side of caution. I would play Guyton if Miller is not 100%, even if he's 90%. I don't think I want to put him out there and risk further injury or risk aggravating it. It's just not worth it.
And we're talking about Cal here. You bring up, last year, and I understand that, but as you said, a different team. I mean, their offensive line struggling. I think that this is a game that Ohio State, I think to me, this game looked like more of a challenge looking at it, last year, looking ahead than I think where we're at right now. Of course, you got to play the games, but I think that this is an opportunity for them to go on the road and take care of business here. I think there's a lot of struggles when it comes to Cal, but the pace that they keep on offense is definitely going to, at least for a while, push and stress this young defense. We know they had trouble cramping up in Columbus. When you head out to the West Coast, if they get another hot day, that could be an issue if they're picking up the pace.
Yeah, I think that's true. Cal does run a fast-paced offense, and Sonny Dykes, of course, brings his throw it all over the yard offense from Texas Tech, and then more recently Louisiana Tech. He's got that track record and that reputation. I think certainly the talent edge will favor the Buckeyes by far, and like you say, I think it maybe promises to be less a challenge than the game was last year when Ohio State needed a touchdown in the last 3 minutes to break a 28-28 tie and win the ball game. They did not tackle well last year. Urban Meyer has reminded everyone of that. The running back for Cal broke 2 long TD runs, and there was some real shoddy defensive play. I think they've shored that up. I think the emphasis has been on the tackling and on the pursuit angles and on just being solid fundamentally. I don't think you're going to see that same kind of problem. The safeties are good tacklers, better tacklers than they were earlier in their career, certainly Bryant and Barnett. And as I said before, the linebacker play has been fundamentally good so far. So I don't see the tackling being an issue, and I think they ought to win by 10 points or better next week. And who knows what the pollsters will think of that, though, Jerry. They penalized the Buckeyes for winning by 35 points the other day with their backup quarterback. So who knows what they're going to do.
Absolutely, and this is, you speak of those polls, this is the Buckeyes' first real chance of the season to get out there in the prime time, in the night lights. You got 7 p.m. kickoff. It's going to be on Fox, so first chance to expose this year's Buckeyes to a lot of those people that'll be voting down the road. And Urban Meyer, he doesn't think of that too. I think he plans on going out there and putting on a performance and putting an Ohio State stamp down here, because as you said, looking down the road, you've got Florida A&M coming up, and then boom, you hit Big Ten play in Wisconsin and their first real test of the season.
Right. I think you've got people a little bit in Columbus sort of lamenting the weakness of the schedule, hoping that they've had adequate preparation by the time Wisconsin comes to town on the 28th. Almost hoping they get a stern test out there at Cal next week, because for a fact that Florida A&M is not going to be one. That was a game that was sort of a last-minute fill-in when Vanderbilt sort of took a powder on the Buckeyes at the last minute and forced them to go out with a little bit over a year till the game was played to find an opponent, which is not easy to do. So that's sort of a quirk on the schedule, and certainly doesn't look like it's going to be much of a competitive challenge. So they really need a competitive challenge, and a lot of people hoping that Cal will at least supply that for us.
And I'll tell you what, Dan, when you join us on Wednesday, we'll really dig into Cal and OSU. We'll look at this thing and we'll break it down and preview it and get your prediction. But hey, it's good to at least have a Buckeyes victory, no matter whether you're playing the Aztecs of San Diego State or the Wolverines of Michigan, especially coming off a disheartening opening game for the Brownies.
Yeah, that's for sure. I guess the oasis in the desert. The Buckeyes, you can count on them on Saturday, even if your Sundays aren't looking too good.
The oasis in the desert.
This week, some great games coming up this week, though. You got to say, of course, all the attention is going to be on the rematch, the Johnny Football versus Alabama. That's the highlight of this week. But some other interesting games coming up. Tennessee going out to Oregon is kind of intriguing. Wisconsin going out to play Arizona State. Going to find out a little bit more about both of those teams. So, it's always good to look ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And as we said, Wednesday, we'll talk a little bit about not just the Buckeyes and Cal, but perhaps some of those games you brought up as well. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan joins us every Monday to break. See, I almost made a new day of the week there. Monday. I tried to combine Monday and Wednesday. I'm just so excited to get you back. I'm trying to combine Wednesday and just keep you on longer. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan joins us every Monday to break down the Buckeyes weekend. Every Wednesday we preview the upcoming matchup. Dan, thank you so much for joining us again today. Go Buckeyes! OH!
Okay, Jerry. See you Wednesday.
You got it, my man. Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan. We're going to get the last break out of the way. When we come back, we're going to wrap things up previewing the Cleveland Indians. They play off a chasing Cleveland Indians as they get ready to take on the Kansas City Royals. When we come back, and we'll wrap things up. Don't go anywhere. Final words coming up next on the Sports Fix.
To the Sports Fix.
If you want to be my lover. It's an addiction. The Sports Fix. We'll be right back.
Portions of the Sports Fix brought to you by Tri-State Quality Builders. Has severe weather damaged your home? Get a quote today at tristatequalitybuilders.com.
Incoming transmission. You got a message.
Sports Fix listeners, don't wait all week to join in on the fun. Follow the Sports Fix on Facebook.
Follow the Sports Fix on Facebook.
They love friends. It's just a click away. Exclusive contests, trivia, tickets, and giveaways from the hottest sports show in town, The Sports Fix. Become a friend and follow The Sports Fix on Facebook today.
Message.
Football season is party season at Harry Buffalo North Olmsted. And no matter who you root for, everyone wins at Harry Buffalo. Every Saturday is Coors Light College Football Saturday with $6 pitchers, 4 bottles for $10, and the Buckeyes in full HD. Every Sunday, the Sports Fix is broadcasting live with giveaways and prizes, and joining you in watching all the Browns action with Bud Light beer specials and $10 hair of the dog pitchers.
Hey, baby, let's go out there like a bunch of crazy dogs. That's some fun.
Plus, every Monday night, catch the Monday Night Football action with some of your favorite Browns players. Football season is most definitely party season, and your headquarters is Harry Buffalo North Olmsted all winter long. Harry Buffalo. Join the herd.
This is Josh Tom of the Cleveland Indians, and you're listening to the Sports Fix.
Indian fever. It's catching fire.
Welcome back to the Sports Fix live here on the sportsfix.net. J-Rocc with you as we wrap things up. Of course, I want to thank my guest today. Hey, John McMullen from the Sports Network. Thanks to you, my man, for joining us every Monday, as well as Dan Wismar from the Cleveland Fan. Both of them here every Monday exclusively on the Sports Fix. Thanks to Jersey Dog for the call earlier. All the comments on Facebook. I didn't even get a chance to get into the Browns. We've got like 150 comments on the Browns between these couple of threads here. I'll read some of those tomorrow, too. Dr. Football will be with us tomorrow, and we'll talk to him as well. Indians 101. My man Jeff Gorman will be with us as we talk about the Indians. I'm playing the Indians fever in the background because, as I said, these Indians chasing down the wild card here over the weekend. A missed opportunity. To me, I'm glad to be licking my chops and going, man, we should have swept them guys. But they did take 2 out of 3 there, and the Indians now head into a key series with the Kansas City Royals here. A team, as I mentioned, just like we talk about how the Detroit Tigers have had the number of the Cleveland Indians, the second biggest differential in all of baseball between one team to another is the advantage that the Indians have had over the Kansas City Royals this year. So now there's a big plus. Hey, Kansas City, though, they're not coming to lay down. They're a game and a half behind us, 3.5 games behind Tampa Bay as we sit 2 games back there in the wild card. So they're coming to play. I think it's going to be a good series here. You got Ubaldo with a chance to set the tone here as he faces Santana tonight, 7:05 with the first pitch. Tomorrow, Zach McAllister and former Indian Jeremy Guthrie out there. And then big game James. Hey, you've got 3 pitchers going out there that can deal and that all have had success at various times of their career against the Indians. So in no way is this a easy win series, but you've got Ubaldo, Zach McAllister, and Scotty Kazmir going out there for these 3 games. I trust those 3 pitchers. Talked about it earlier when we kicked things off talking about the Indians, about how we saw with Kluber coming back, as they continue to stretch him out. We're adding some guys here. It enables you to utilize Carrasco in the bullpen. This expanded roster has just enough extra pieces that are valuable pieces and not just young guys getting opportunity that I think that may be the tipping point here for the Indians. But it's all moot if they don't go out there on the field and do it. We can talk about it all. You go out there and you beat the Kansas City Royals. Tonight, your first chance to go out there and do it. The Indians still come in winning 4 of their last 6. So they continue to keep the pressure on. As I said, 2 games back there in that wild card spot. The opportunity is there. Will the fans be out there to see it as well? I mean, I understand that we're starting to hit the colder weather and all of that, but the excuse of the first Browns game, that's out of the way. If anything, you should have a hangover from the first Browns game and be ready to get out there and go root these Indians on. The Browns won't be back in town for 2 weeks. By the time there's a home game back here in Cleveland, we'll really have a sense for where this Indians team is pushing it down. But looking ahead, you got Kansas City here. You take care of business at home because you're going on the road. The White Sox have been a good matchup all year for the Indians. You've got 4 games in Chicago and then another 3 against the same Royals before you come back home. Remember, talking about this stretch, I said 4 of 6 can easily turn into 10 of 11, 11 of 13 as these teams continue to line up. But you have to go out there and do it no matter whether we talk about it. The pitching, as I said, has continued. As we get close here, we're into overtime a few minutes. The pitching has continued to be playoff level pitching even yesterday. I'll say this right off the bat, by the way. Who saw that coming by Dice K? Dice K meanders down in the minor leagues for the Indians, can't even crack the major league roster, tells the Tribe he wants them to let him go. They let him go. He goes to the Mets and goes 0-3 with an 11 or so ERA, and then comes out here, no hits the Tribe for the first 4 innings and pitches very well. Give him credit against the Indians there yesterday. Who saw that? That's why I saw a sweep coming, because after you take pretty easily as well, you take the first 2 games. Vinny Pastano sure made Saturday night's game a little bit closer than it should have been, but as you take those 2 games there, and then you go, okay, we got Dice K on the bump here for game 3. Really thought they should have had it. You definitely have to take 2 out of 3 here against Kansas City, and I hate to be eyes wide open greedy, but a sweep would sure as hell be nice as you get ready to hit the road for 7 with Chicago and these same Kansas City Royals. Because if you, let me just put it to you this way. You go out there and you put it to Kansas City in these 3 games, You knock them far enough back in contention that by the time you see them in 4 more days after you take care of Chicago, you've got a beaten down Kansas City team, which makes that next series more in the Indians' favor. It's a chess game at this point. It's chess, not checkers. Like my man would say in training day, it's chess, not checkers. Indians got to continue to play the right moves so that we're not looking at a checkmate anytime before the playoffs. I said it. I put my money down at the start of the season that they will chase down and capture the second wild card, and I have not wavered, and I will not waver. Tribe fans, get out there and support this team because they are a playoff caliber team playing a lot of non-playoff caliber teams, and this is hopefully the run that'll get them into it. If not, they got no one to blame but themselves. We'll be here talking about it tomorrow. Jeff Gorman from Indians101.com will be with us. Dr. Football, Belichickis is in the house. All of that, your phone calls, so much more tomorrow. Same bat time, same bat channel, live right here on thesportsfix.net. We'll see you tomorrow at noon. Have a good night, Cleveland. Go Indians. We love you. Enjoy your Monday Night Football. Enjoy the Tribe. We'll see you tomorrow, live right here at noon.
City, all of that. Warehouse District, Euclid Corridor, and all the flat. You know that I'm a Tribes fan, and I love Slimans. Crockett Park's the perfect place for me to spend some time in. Baby, this is Cleveland. It is so much more to us. You can even go to Severance Hall to see an orchestra. Hey.